life transformational coach, professional speaker, and author, he is passionate about making a difference. He loves achieving and contributing to outcome focused results. He empowers his learners through transformational seminars, customized indoor sessions, energizing outbound programs, innovative and engaging virtual sessions, and insightful one to one personalized coaching. He is the author of 6 books. His first book, Design Your Life, was published in 2017, and another book, $1 Million Second, published by CNBC TV 18 and endorsed by Brian Tracy, is his super hit bestseller. In today's episode, let us chat with Brigadier Sushil Bhasin on Battlefield to Boardroom, Military Leadership Applied in the Corporate Environment. This is the Guiding Voice podcast series, the Guiding Voice for a Better Future. Folks, I'm your host Navin Samala, just a fellow IT professional on a mission to shape the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Through the Guiding Voice, we help successful leaders share their knowledge and wisdom with the world, and our audience will acquire more knowledge per every minute by tuning into our podcast than any other podcast in this space. Thank you so much for joining me. And we are extremely pleased to have Sushil part of our journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Sushilji, hearty welcome to the Guiding Voice, and I'm super excited and humbled to have you as a guest.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you very much. And a salute to you and your viewers. Thank you very much. Honored to be here on this wonderful platform. And congratulations to you for your 250th episode that you have just done. I think you're doing a great job by transferring and guiding people through your voice, through various voices, so that you can spread knowledge, spread ideas, which can be a value add in people's lives. Thank you.
All right, so pleasure to have you, Sushilji. And in fact, I've gone through your talks and your podcasts. They are so rich in knowledge. Thoroughly enjoyed each one of those conversations, and I'm super excited about our conversation today. And without further ado, let's get started. Can you share briefly about your career journey, how you transitioned from battlefield to coaching? And along that, what are top 3 things that have helped you so far to be successful in your professional life? And I always see you beaming with energy, motivating others and all, right? So let's talk about those aspects as well in the next set of questions, but let's start with your career journey.
I was very fortunate that God gave me a beautiful place like Shimla to be spending my childhood in. And right there, a seed of joining the army got sown when I used to be walking to the school and I used to find bunches of army officers marching up to command headquarters. I have never had anyone in my family for I've covered at least 6 generations. There's nobody in the family who ever was in the army. I mean, I had no knowledge about the army, but I was just got inspired by these people. And then, long story short, just out of my perseverance, and they say if you manifest something, it happens. I landed up in Scenic School, much against the wishes of my parents. So I took advantage of my grandfather's love for me. So I took that route because I knew my parents are not agreeing. And yeah, in those days, when I told my grandfather, he says, "Who's your father to stop you? I am there, na? You go ahead." Today, I don't think if we can do that also. Anyway, so then 4.5 years in Scenic School. So I've done 3 schools: Loreto Convent, Shimla, St. Edward, Shimla, and then Scenic School, Kapurthala. Once you went to Scenic School, there was just one single aim to join the army. I've never had the opportunity of thinking of another career. So it is never comparing, should I do this or that? Maybe only for a few hours, maybe when I said, should I join the army, the navy, or the air force? But then I think I was very strong about the army, not for any other reason. Didn't know much about Navy, Air Force in any case. Anyway, so landed up in the NDA and got commissioned. Now, the first, I want to tell my viewers, life doesn't work according to your plans. You must plan. You must plan, but don't expect the plan to work. So you should be prepared with what we call in the army contingency plans. And if you are not prepared, you're going to be hit hard. If you're prepared, you will be hit softer. That means you're prepared. Okay. So so I planned to be in the infantry. I joined the Bihar regiment looking up that, okay, one day I'll be a general, because that is what everyone, when you join the army, you're ambitious to be at the top. But right in the beginning, in the very first year, because of a problem that I had with my back in the IMA itself, I started having a problem. In 5 years' time, the back problem had aggravated, and there was no other option for me than to transfer to ASC. Army Service Corps is a logistics corps of the Army. So it is not as glamorous. It doesn't have the type of glamour that the infantry or the armored corps has. And also, the moment you come to ASC, you have deprived yourself. You can't be a commander. You can't be a div commander. You can't be a brigade commander. You can't be a army commander. All that, that means that part of your life, that option is shut off. So I joined the ASC. And I must tell you a small story here that when I shifted after 5 years from infantry to ASC, and the first thing happened was that I went for my BIOS course, young officers course. And it was the first day, we were still settling down. And in the evening, I went for dinner. He said, dinner time nahi hua abhi. So I went to the bar. At that time, I was a total teetotaler. I was, for 13 years of my service, I was a teetotaler. So I went to the bar only because there's no other place. So there I found one senior officer sitting having a drink. He welcomed me. I sat down on that bar stool next to him and he said something. He got to know I'm ex-NDA. He was ex-NDA. In ASC, we don't have many ex-NDA officers. So he said, Sushil, if you are going to, you've shifted your tracks, you've come to ASC, you're going to do your first course. Make sure that the first course you do very well. This course sends a benchmark. Whatever standard you set, firstly, it becomes a standard for yourself. You will not, if we have a category in all courses in the army, we have something called Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, A, B, C. So these are the gradings. A grading is the top. So he says if you get an alpha on this course, you will continue to get alphas. One, that people get biased that, oh, he's an alpha material. And the second thing is, more importantly, you set a standard for yourself. You stand a benchmark and you will not like to come below that. So that was the beginning. I was 5 years late in my race, in my journey, but that was the beginning of a little upturn. So I got an alpha. I topped my course. I soon went for a driving and maintenance course, topped that also, became an instructor there first, and so on and so forth. And many years later, I commanded that establishment, and that's the only place an ASC officer gets to command an all arms team. So, Naveen, it was a journey that was going on very well. And according to the trends that were happening, according to my performance, I done higher command course, which at that point of time means you are number one in your course. Okay, so it was going on very well till 2002. 2002, I was posted to Bareilly, and I was told you'll be the chairman of the army school. So when I landed up, I asked, my boss said that Sushil, I know you'll do your professional job very well, but I have a challenging task. You'll be the chairman of the army school. I said, sir, everyone is telling me that that's going to be tough, but what's the problem there? So he explained to me. He said that there has been no consistency in the principle. We've had 5 principles change in 2 years, and that was a big issue. And there was no principle there, there's no direction, and there's a problem. So please do something about it. I got into the car. Sometimes there are moments in your life, a small moment which has a large impact. I got into the car to go home, just 5 minutes drive from office to home. And the thought that came to my mind, my daughter was in class 12, my son was in class 10. And at that point of time, for me, my two children's career was more important than my career. And the question that came to my mind was, wouldn't that be a problem with the 2000 children's parents?
Yeah.
They would be having a similar ambition from their children, similar concern for their children's career. I reached home. I told my wife, I don't know what I do in the office. I will empower, I will delegate, I will work at night, but I am going to take the school as a primary thing. Again, long story short, let's leave it. But one day, in 6 months' time, the school was changed. I was spending more time in the school than in my office, and I used to do my office work in the evening. I started seeing tremendous results coming up. One fine day, there was a newspaper, a Hindi newspaper in Bareilly called Amar Ujala, which had a headline on the front page saying, Army School mein tufan aaya. And it said that there is one brigadier who has come, who sorted out things. Now, discipline is very good, this, that, and the other. And we started getting a lot of admissions. A lot of army officers' children who had gone to convent school started coming back. So that was a journey. And then one day, after about 6 months, when the school reopened after summer vacations, we had a function at which the head girl of the school came up and said, I want to say a few words to the chairman. And she said a couple of words. And after that, she spoke for about 10 minutes of how the school had changed, how they were children were very happy about it and all, and how they were proud about it. And then she asked me to come on the stage and said, sorry, just before that, she said, Sir, thank you for, at the end of those 10 minutes, the last thing that she said, Sir, thank you for restoring our pride in us. So when we used to be playing in the officers' colony where people go to different schools, they used to tease us and say, You go to the army school? And we had nothing to say. Sir, today, they say, You go to the army school? And we say, Yes. And the whole school stood up and clapped. And that was a moment where I said, I found the purpose of my life. I want to do something for children. So I had 6 years to go, but I took premature retirement, came out of the army to become an educationist. I said, let me do something for the children. And therefore, I set up a camp with my cousins. So we first wanted to start a school of our own. Then we started a camp in which we did adventure based outdoor learning. So it was basically learning or education beyond the classroom. So that was a beginning. It started with children, but somehow we did not do anything that should be done when you start a business. We didn't do any business, we didn't do any market survey. We didn't have a proper business plan. We just had Josh, we had that zest. We said, karenge, karenge. But we didn't know how to do it the civilian way. We almost set up like an army unit. That camp was just, there's an army flag type of a flag like you enter a unit, there's a quarter guard, there was a shooting range. People used to walk in and say, Does this belong to an army officer? It was so much like army look. So that is in the journey, and it's also this journey or this is also on a TEDx talk where I said the purpose of life. That I discovered my purpose of life at the age of 54. I would encourage your viewers to have a look at that because that gives you some further details on how I found the purpose of my life. And then that was 2004. 2004 onwards, when the schools and colleges were not playing up, we had to do corporate training. So today also, even in a LinkedIn post day for yesterday, when I did a college induction program in Pune, and I loved that program. So I always say that my bread and butter comes from the corporate, but I enjoy the jam that I see in the colleges and schools. I still love that.
What a powerful message. Yeah. Bread and butter comes from the corporate, jam comes from the colleges and schools. Yeah. In fact, I also thoroughly enjoy conversing with this bright talent because they come up with so many different ideas and they also help us think outside the box. And their passion is something and the curiosity which amazes.
Yeah,
Right.
so even today, like
Yeah.
if you just see that the amount of work I've done for students, and it's most of it is free. Most of it is free. 90% is free. So this book, Design Your Life, of course, that's not free, so you have to buy it. Design Your Life is for children. It is designed for a 10th class student on how to shape your career. So that is Design Your Life. This book got converted into Zindagi Unplugged, 24 episodes. And then when we were somewhere around 18th episode, I got a call from them to say it's doing very well. Can we extend it to 48? I said, please go ahead. The book had not given me money, but Spotify paid me well enough. They were paying me 20,000 rupees an episode. I was already at 4.8 lakhs. Now it became a 9.6 lakhs contract. I said, go ahead. After that, my YouTube channel, 48 episodes of that. There's another podcast which is on the anvil called Boot Camp of Life. That is all about my army stories, and people have been asking for it. And so we have started with that. So I've recorded about 4 episodes, and when we are done with a few more, then we'll roll them out. So that is, and a lot more that I'm doing for the children. Yeah, there is a Instagram live I do every Friday at 6 p.m. A lot of children come there. They'll ask me a lot of questions. Then I did a Josh talk on goal setting in Hindi, and that has an app in which now I've got about 3,000 odd fans coming up. I do interact a lot with children, and that gives me a lot of pleasure. Yeah.
So, throughout this career journey, right, what are top three attributes that have helped you really to succeed and to inspire rest of the world?
See, I'll tell you, one is that there has to be something from inside, some inspiration, some spark. आप जितना भी artificially करो ना, you ask anyone to motivate you. Motivation is extrinsic. It comes from outside. You depend on another source. You are depending on somebody to come and motivate you. You're depending on somebody to come and motivate you. And that is going to be short term. And that motivation can fade away. What you really need is an ignited mind, something where there's a spark inside, where you are very, very particular about, there's some passion. You want to do something, and a passion with a mission. Passion with a mission. A passion should always also be a passion also with a lot of zeal, lot of enthusiasm. And if your passion does not have a mission with it, then it can also become a poison. So I always say, listen, passion is good, but passion can also be poison, which means that if you're so passionate about something, but you don't overall see whether that can pay you, that can make a good career, that can have a long life, that passion may become useless. One was that there was a very strong desire from inside me. I don't know any reasons why it was there, how it was there. It was there, and it is there till today. Today, I know that 2 weeks back, I did a keynote speech for a bank. I was very unwell. I went to the doctor. I said, I've got a keynote speech. People are coming from all over India. I can't go and tell them I'm not well. I had cough, I had cold, I had fever, I had body ache. So I told him, kuch bhi karo, make me fit by day after tomorrow. So all antibiotics and all type of steam inhalation and all, everything he said I did, everything I did. I also did a lot of manifestation, a lot of prayers, a lot of whatever I could do. And I reached there. Those 2 hours, just those 2 hours, the moment I was invited on the stage, I don't know from where the energy came. And they told me one thing. So you're talking about leadership and you're talking about time management. Fine. But we also want you to excite these people. I want to energize this crowd. And I thought to myself, I said, my own energy is down in the drains. मैं इनकी energy कहाँ से लाऊंगा? But the moment I see audience, my energy comes from, I don't know from where.
Yeah.
And then after 2 hours, when I finished my talk and I went and had a cup of tea, within 15 minutes, I was coughing, all that had come back. But the 2 hours, not a single time, not a single cough, not a single sneeze. Those 2 hours went beautifully. It is the audience that excites me. It is where you are passionate, you will find a way. So that is point one. Point two is you have to be authentic. I found that if you are different to different people, you say something, do something else, authenticity is very important. Third thing I found that what goes well in anything like this is communication. And I'm not saying communication skills, I'm going a step ahead to talk about influencing skills. Because if I communicate very well, which means that what I say, you hear very well, you understand, but you do nothing about it, then I'm a good communicator. But if I am saying something and you start doing it tomorrow, then I'm a good influencer. So I feel that the three things that have really helped me is my ingenuity, my authenticity, my energy, my passion, and my result orientation as also being an influencer.
So amazing, Sushilji. Now let's move to the next question. Can you briefly talk about toughest lessons that you learned during your army or the military days?
Yes, one of the lessons is life will never go according to what you're doing. So you will get googlies. You will get googlies and you should know how to handle them. So I've had many, many tough things. Very first thing when I told you that I had a backache in IMA. And then I struggled through that for about 2 years. After about 1 year, I was sent to the hospital in Lucknow. The doctors made some mistake. There used to be something called myelogram. There was no MRI and all those days. There was no CT scan. I went through something called myelogram. That dye went into, instead of going into my spinal column, it went outside. It created havoc for me. I was on something called the DI list, dangerously ill list. All type of doctors were running around me. I knew something is strange and something is worrying. I came out of that. Then my back was in a very bad shape for 2 years. I came across a doctor and I was posted in a small place called Danapur. So one day in a party, he said, So, shall I tell you a sure cure to live well? Sure cure for your backache. No, you know what? और क्या चाहिए मेरे को उस समय जिंदगी में और कुछ नहीं चाहिए था. I wanted my back to be all right. I said, हाँ sir, बताओ. He said, learn to live with it. I wanted to give him a slap, but in the army you can't do it. I went back home to my room, and I used to write a diary those days. And in my diary, I said, what the hell does this chap think he is? And I wrote 2, 3 abuses for him to say, what the hell? I am not going to learn to live with it. I'm going to struggle and get out of it. So there are 5 stories on my website. If anyone gets interested, just see the 5 stories. This is one of them. How I decided that I will take care of my back, I will come out. Now, the moment you manifest that, the moment you say, I am not going to accept this doctor's version, I'm not going to give up, I'm not going to let, and today at 71, if day for yesterday, I've done a college induction program, 6 hours. Now, I was not standing all the 6 hours. I used to sit down once in a while after a little time if I found. But if I sat for 5 minutes, within the sixth minute, I was wanting to get up again because वो बैठ के मजा नहीं आता है. So I would take a little bit of rest, but still I do a 6 hours workshop without a problem, even today. So I have handled my own back. So that was one tough thing that happened. Then, of course, my changeover from infantry to ASC, which turned out to be for the good. And the lesson learned was that, yeah, enjoy the journey you are on. I learned a very good lesson very early in life, and I've been talking about that lesson to a lot of people. Focus on what you have and not on what you don't have, or what you should have had, or what you had once upon a time. I was a cross country blue from NDA. Can I keep crying over it that I could run? No, I can't run. I can't. Baat khatam. Can I do something else? There is a friend of mine, Girish Gogia. He's now called Mr. Positive Man. So he was an ocean diver, and he dived into the ocean, hit his head on the ground, on the ocean bed. And when he came up, he was floating. So, anyway, long story short, his complete body down below the neck was paralyzed. And after 3 days, he said, and he was a young chap, maybe 30 or so. And he said, I started asking God, ki, what did you keep me alive for, to be in bed all my life? And then he says, 3 din, 4 din, I cried, I cursed God, everything done. Then I said, how long will I keep crying? And then he says, while lying down in bed, I realized one thing. My limbs can't work, my body can't work, but the entire operational system is here. 6 inches above your shoulder is everything where things happen. So he says, I've got that intact. I can think, I can speak, I can smell, I can see. मेरे को problem क्या है? And then he just concentrated on the 6 inches above his shoulder. And that's what I tell people. That's where your asset is. Look after the 6 inches above your shoulder. That is what makes a difference. So if you focus on what you have and not on what you should have had. And as I said, life is not, or success is not a destination. It's a journey. Enjoy the journey. Whatever is happening, enjoy it. And that's what I did. I think in the army, lived in Sikkim in high altitude, lived in deserts and burning hot places. I was posted in, we were doing some exercises in Pokhran and Jaisalmer. I mean, I don't know how many of people could have gone through a temperature of 54 degrees Celsius, and we have done that. Not even a fan on. You're talking about ACs or not? Fan bhi nahi hai, tent mein hai, itni garmi hai, any amount. You take a bath, you're still sweating because the water is also hot.
My God, that sounds so scary. And I have a story to talk to share. Recently, I have been to this Zeno conference, and they invited one lady. Her name is Shalini Saraswati. She has been to some South American country on a vacation, and the moment she came back, right, she's infected with some virus or bacteria, and she lost her limbs. Like it started with one hand, and it got dropped off, and second one, and she consulted the doctor, and they got to know that it is one of the rarest of the rare infections, and finally they have amputated her legs too proactively. She's not able to use her hands or legs at all. But again, she started thinking positively, and now she has become a blade runner, right? With the inspiration from her coach, and also those kind of stories really motivate us, because people worry about some trivial things, though they have everything intact and all. But if we when we come across these kind of stories, right, we are nowhere near to them in terms of the kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. I normally talk about what's your excuse. बताओ
yeah,
क्या excuse है, मैं आपको बताता हूँ. People with 10 times of that problem still did well.
yeah, absolutely. Great conversation, sir. Now let's talk briefly about how this military leadership or the army leadership is different from corporate leadership. Well, what are your observations?
It's so fresh in my mind because therefore yesterday I did this workshop with a college in Pune called IIEBM. And what I was talking to them about, I titled my session of 6 hours activity based workshop, and I said, preparing for the corporate battlefield. Preparing for the corporate battlefield. Sun Tzu is a Chinese military leader or a general who is also a thought leader and a military strategist. And there are many like Clausewitz and all. But one thing about Sun Tzu is that he's one person who's respected both by India, Eastern and Western armies alike. And he wrote in 400 BC something called The Art of War, which has been translated. It's very difficult to read it in Chinese in the language it was originally written. But Art of War is basically all principles of war. And he had at that time said that these principles are equally applicable to life. And then many of them have been translated into books which say Sun Tzu's Art of War for business, for management, for trading, for whatever. So many books on that. So I had laid my hands on one of these books somewhere in 2004 and 5 when I just came out of the army. And I realized, because I was new to the corporate world, I realized that a lot of those things were making sense. In 2008, I got a requirement from a company where they wanted to say, sir, can you teach us leadership differently? And I experimented with them by something I named Battlefield to Boardroom. Now, this name already exists. There's a book by that title, so it's not my own name. But I found that that name was appropriate for the program I was doing. So I told these people that in the army we have something called appreciation, which is a process or a method to arrive at the best or the arrive at a sound operational plan. If you follow the same thing in the corporate, you can arrive at the sound business plan just by following that principle, that method. So I told them, we first talk about terms of reference, which means what are your restrictions. So you just write down what are the boundaries I have to operate in. Could be your company says we are only in the rural market. Maybe your company says that we are only in the Indian market. So that means that okay, I can't go global. So I have to focus myself. So that is you draw your boundary. Then I said in the army we say aim. So that you also have to have an aim, a very clear aim. So the army has a couple of ways of saying what does that aim mean. There are certain sub parts to it, which I also explained to them, and they were also relevant in the corporate world equally. Then we talk about factors, and the factors we have ground. So we talk about ground means we talk about the terrain in which you are going to operate. So I said, what I say is terrain, you will say market. My terrain, your market. My enemy, your competitor. My time, your time. My surprise, your surprise. Okay. So I told them that these are the factors we consider. You do similarly. The CEO sitting in the room of that company, he says, I wonder why don't we do this in the corporate world? It's so easy. I said, sir, you tell me, you're asking me. You tell me why don't you do it? So from there, I developed a program called Battlefield to Boardroom, which I do today. And this program, which I did for this college, and this college is owned by an army officer who's a friend of mine. If you go to this college, you'll find there's a tank, a war trophy at the gate. Now they've got a multi-barrel rocket launcher, again as a war trophy. So they've got an army environment. They also follow army ethics like discipline and all that. I picked up this title, Preparing for the Corporate Battlefield. So I feel that the corporate also operates on similar principles. They have to be adapted. So what's happening is that the corporate operates on similar things. Now, what I experienced through 34 years of military leadership, Naveen, it's been about 17 years that I've applied that in the corporate world. I've applied all those principles. I've experimented with more than 250 organizations, more than 600 corporate training programs I've done. So I now know very well not only that which principles apply well, which principles don't, but also I know which principles apply how well. So it's now easy for me because, firstly, having experienced military leadership, and then whatever I learned from it, I applied it. And now I also run a very effective, very powerful corporate training program called Battlefield to Boardroom, which is a 6 months long coaching program. So now I'm going to convert it into a smaller one because 6 months, I think people are losing patience. They don't have that patience to go over 6 months. So I'll create a shorter version of it for about 3 months very soon. So this is a very powerful comparison. And I think all people who bring some army values into their culture, some people who employ ex-army officers in their companies, they certainly get the benefit out of all these things like discipline, loyalty, integrity, ownership, trust, teamwork. All these things, army officers are brought in you've lived it through it. Your teamwork, right from the beginning, you know that I doesn't work, it has to be we. So you'll find generally an army officer will be a very good team player. You can trust army officers, then, and they know how to trust other people because our entire life depends on trust. Other people learn it through lectures and all. We have learned it through life. We have learned it through our own experiences. So it's very, very powerful. And I feel that, now even Simon Sinek has done a couple of videos on why is military leadership the supreme leadership. And he comes around with a lot of solid answers. And I find that although he's talking about the American army, but we find that any army in the world, the culture and the traits of an army officer or a military leader are the same. So they can be applied in the corporate world, which is also quite similar across the world.
That's wonderful. And now let's move to my next question. Like, you are a student forever, right? What is it like getting trained by world-class global trainers? I think Jack Canfield, Anthony Robbins, Brian Tracy, Bob Nelson, Michael Losier, and John Foppe, right? So these are a few names that come to my mind, having gone through your profile and all. So is there any specific learning that stayed forever with you from these guys?
Lots of them, lots of them, lots of them. See, when I came out from the army, I don't know, I was lucky. God gave me the thought that forget about your 34 years of laurels that I was in the army, forget the past. आगे देखो क्या हो रहा है. So I realized that if I have to be a corporate trainer, and particularly after first few years went into focusing on schools and colleges, which didn't work much. So when I had to step into the corporate world, I said, okay, I can apply my army experience here, but I'll have to go beyond. If I aim to be a world class trainer, I must go to world class leaders and learn from them. So the first person I learned was from Jack Canfield. I still remember he came to Mumbai. There's a friend of mine who had done his workshop in Delhi 4 days earlier. He told me, Sushil is coming, you must attend. I said, how much does it cost? He said, 17,000. I just left the army, put all my money into a new business. 17,000 was a very big amount for a 1 day workshop. But he insisted and he said it'll be worth it. And it was. So I realized, and that's again my message to people, the best investment you can make in your life is in your personal development. The best investment you can make. Investment in property, investment in gold, they are all okay, but there's no. So you must have, and I feel that's my philosophy now. About 20% of what you earn must go back into your self development. So invest into acquiring more skills, upscaling, and reskilling, whatever. Because what will take you forward in life is your capability, and your capability needs enhancement. It needs reinforcement. It needs refreshing. It can't be. I always give this example. People buy a new phone every time. Why do you find? Oh, it's got new memory. It's got more memory. It's got more battery power and all that. What about this device? एक MBA कर लिया बोलते हो कि अब कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है. You have to the way you keep upgrading your devices, the same way you need to upgrade yourself also. You have to have a newer version. If you look for okay, this was i5 and now I want i10 and all that, you better also improve your version. And please, I tell my students, when are you announcing your next version in the market? So Jack Canfield was one. Then I did a couple of them like Bob. You saw that Michael Losier and all that. Then ultimately my aim was to go and do something with Tony Robbins because But Tony Robbins was expensive, and Tony Robbins has never come to India till today. Some of his online programs have been there, but in person, he has not done a program in India as yet. I was in Singapore. I had gone to visit my daughter, and he had come there. So I took that chance and attended his 3 days program there, which totally shook me up. So I learned a lot. So when you say life's lessons, many of them, one after the other, like he talked about energy, 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 energy. That energy boosting up came from him. He talks about massive action. He talks about massive action. I realized thinking and acting in that sequence, not act and think, but think and act. Okay. So these are some of the things which got ingrained in me, like they became a part of my life. I don't now also remember it's Tony Robbins. It is my own DNA now. In Singapore, he announced his UPW, which is happening in Sydney, and without much thinking. And when I sometimes talk about my programs, people start saying, "Nahi sir, paisa nahi hai." मेरे पास पैसा नहीं था. It was about 3 lakhs of expense in 2015. But I'm telling you, I made an advance of 20,000, which that was the minimum advance that you have to give to book your seat. And I said 20,000 de do. I will manage. I'll figure out, because where the will is there, if you know that you're going to get some returns, you will invest. So take it as an investment, not as an expense. So I gave 20,000 rupees. Then in the due course of 2-3 months, I managed. There was an upheaval at home. My wife was very unhappy about it and all that. But still, I knew my wife is not going to run away just because of this. So मान जाएगी बाद में. But abhi, let me not go by emotions and sentiments. Let me do what I need. So, what you need and what you want and what are you committed, these three words have to be understood. Nothing happens by wanting. People want success, but people want success in their comfort zone. And in my book, I mentioned comfort zone is a decay zone. You'll decay there. You can't progress in your comfort zone. Anything that is good in life, anything that is worthwhile is difficult. Nothing that you do which is really good is easy. Whether it is going to the gym, whether it's passing an exam, anything that is going to give you results is not easy, it's difficult. So you have to choose the difficult path. And there's a prayer we have. In the India, there's a prayer, and one line of that prayer I never forget, and I quote it to people: God, give me the capability of choosing the harder right instead of the easier wrong. Give me the capability of choosing the harder right, the harder option, which is the right option. And then take plunge and say, I will do it. So self confidence is another thing. Army gave me that self confidence. Now you have that confidence, I can do it. Yeah. So then after that, lot of others, the names you have taken were probably, maybe I've not refreshed it on my website and all. Blair Singer, Sam Cawthon. Sam Cawthon, I've spent about 6 lakhs in doing his. I'm already a speaker. I was already speaking on the stage, but he does something. He's got something called Speakers Institute. And I did his prodigy program for 6,000 rupees, 6 lakh rupees only to bring myself to another level. So if you want to be professional, you have to all do all that.
Such a powerful thoughts of wisdom, and I'm truly inspired. In fact, yeah, I'm realizing the value of those programs. And also, initially we might think it is kind of expensive, but we will get a lot more than what we spend. So thank you for sharing all those details. So now let's talk about your book, this $1 million second, wherein you talk more about being time conscious rather than managing time. Right. So what are your tips in terms of managing the time wisely?
Firstly, I say there's nothing called time management. It is life management. You don't manage time. Time is fixed. So what you manage is your life. What do you manage is your work. Okay. So self management or life management is what people call time management. When you say time management, your mind straight away goes into tools that you want, how to do it, make a to-do list or get an app or all that. That is not what I thought was important, because people who use these tools still don't manage their time. People have a to-do list, they can't complete it, and things like that. Procrastination comes in. I came out with a realization that time management is not an issue. Time consciousness is an issue. When I say time consciousness, I'm talking about being conscious, being aware of the value, importance, and relevance of time. Do I really care for time? Do I respect time? What is my relationship with time? What is my relationship with time? Do I let it go? Do I let it go or I catch hold of? I am not so much for, I may get late for many things. But if I've been able to do three things instead of two and got late on one of them, my overall return is still better. So if I want to be like branded as, oh, he's never late, maybe in a place like Bombay, I'll do two meetings in a day. And I was never late because I went half an hour earlier and sat down in his office. Well, I'll waste half an hour there. Of course, I tell people you don't even have to waste half an hour. Now you can be on your mobile and you can answer some calls, you can answer some messages, all that. You need not waste time. But if instead of that, I'm just on time and maybe 5 minutes earlier, and that is what I plan at, but I do five meetings instead of three, I'm okay to get late for 5 minutes for one. So I have developed a system which is more practical, which is like on the fly. That even if I have not been able to make a to do list, my mind should have it. So I have a complete system around it as to how to do it, and it works very well. So I advocate that, but that's in a long time management workshop. So yes, $1 million second was in fact, I'm going to now rewrite this book or maybe coming with a second edition because there are 150 odd videos on YouTube which are free, are beyond this book, which means after this book was written, the type of knowledge I gained, the type of experience I gained, the type of feedback I got from people resulted in that.
Wow, that's so inspiring. And one thing that stuck to me is respect the time. Do you
Yeah.
want to let it go, or do you want to use it wisely? Now, this has been fabulous conversation, Sushilji. But let's add some spice to the episode. Are you ready for a quick rapid fire round?
Oh, sure, sure.
All right. So, can you share with our audience what was your childhood fantasy?
Childhood fantasy actually was always to fly. But very soon the army took over, so I think somewhere it got lost.
Interesting. All right. So, what is the best piece of advice that you have received so far?
My grandfather was my best teacher, and one advice that he gave me right from the beginning was that forgive people, and that has been a part of my life. I always forgive people for whatever wrong they have done because I think I also do wrong and they also done wrong, so I don't take it against them for the lifetime.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
Now, can you share any other life changing incident that changed your perspective apart from joining the Sainik school? You mentioned about that. Other than that, is there any other life changing incident?
So life changing incident. Of course, changing over from army to corporate was a life changing experience. And that one little lesson which I talk about there is, are you prepared to explore the unknown? Exploring the unknown is a part of life which, the moment you prepare for that, okay, I'll try out new things. Okay. And another thing, yeah, Brian Tracy taught me this. He said, if you want to succeed in life, double your failure rate. And I said, what does that mean? And then he explained, you normally don't attempt anything that you think you'll fail in. You don't attempt it because you think it'll fail ho jayega. So he says, if you're prepared to fail and you say, and I've got a quote around that now when I say, my quote is, what's wrong about being wrong? I didn't come to this planet to be right all the time. So it's okay to be wrong. I'm prepared to be wrong. And I'm prepared to admit that I was wrong. So what he said is that if you think that you can't do something, you try it. Out of 10 times, 6 times, you will not fail in what you thought you were going to fail. So that is how you're going to increase your success rate.
Wonderful. Here comes my next one. What is your favorite word in another language other than English or Hindi?
Oh, I would say like I know Russian, and the term that I use very often and I love it is "Ya lublю вас." I love you.
I love you. Yeah, Lublovas, right?
"Ya lublю вас."
Yeah, Lublovas. All right. Great learning for me. And here comes the last one for the rapid fire. What is a fantasy gadget that you would like to see or invent yourself?
Really speaking, never thought of it, but now that you're saying, maybe that, like when we have a mobile or we are on Zoom now, I could also have a cup of tea with you. So you could give me a cup of tea and I could have a cup of tea with you. So maybe sometimes we will be able to online deliver also so that Amazon goes away. And, something like the ATM that you say something and your device only delivers you whatever you want. So something like
Wow.
that.
Such a creative thought. All right, great rapid fire, Sushilji. Now let's flip back to the mainstream. And before I let you go, one final question for today's conversation. What will be your biggest piece of advice to those aspiring to make big in their careers or lives? Anything you can pick.
Today, you see, we always say change is the only constant. We say that. When my grandfather was young, things were changing. When I was young, things were changing. Things are changing today. But today, for people in this current generation, today's current world, I think the greatest thing that you can start doing today is learning how to cope up with the speed of change. The speed of change is something which is the biggest challenge today. And people who are going to be successful in future are clearly those, and time management is going to be one of the very important things where you're prepared to change and you're flexible, you can do things on the fly, and you can get the best out of your time, because time is a resource that'll remain constant. Everything else can change, but there will be always 24 hours in a day, even 100 years later. So that is one resource. People don't realize it's a resource. Time is a resource, the only resource which is equal to everyone, equal with your competitors. The president of USA has the same time that a rickshawala in Mumbai has. No change. Okay. And that's the only resource that is predictable, because I know that even after 100 years, there'll be 24 hours in a day. Make the best use of this resource. At least on one place, you are level field with anyone in the world.
Wonderful. Such a powerful advice. And thank you so much, Sushilji, for joining me. And it was thought provoking. And I feel super energized after the conversation. Thank you so much for your time and really appreciate your wonderful, wonderful insights.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. So that was a fantastic conversation with Brigadier Sushil Bhasin. And folks, before we move into the trivia section, here's a request to you. In case if you haven't subscribed to us, please subscribe from the app where you have tuned in from. Also, if you have loved this episode and found the conversation useful, request you to share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who can benefit from the guiding voice. Thank you so much in advance. Now let's hop into the trivia segment of today's episode. And today we spoke a lot about battlefield to boardroom strategies and how military leadership helps somebody in the corporate world, right? Let's take a step back and understand about US presidents who worked in the Air Force or Army. You know, two US presidents, Ronald Reagan and George Bush, served as airmen. Reagan served when the branch was still known as the Army Air Forces, whereas George Bush served in the Texas Air National Guard before transferring to the Air Force Reserve. Interesting, isn't it? That's all for today. So, folks, before I let you go, request you to share your topic recommendations or guest speaker suggestions by contacting me through social media or email me at theguidingvoiceforyou@gmail.com. Thank you in advance. I'm your host Navin Samala, just a fellow IT professional and a passionate learner on a mission to make a difference in the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Until next time, bye bye. See you all in the next episode with another wonderful guest.